seeing this beautiful vision, which felt very real, of a very large goddess. She was fierce, but I was unafraid. I was just basking in the glory. I could feel my temperature rise. I could feel, that my face was red because of the heat that was emanating.
So,
And
what is the connection of Sri Yantra? Is it like a portal to higher dimensions or to connect with the extraterrestrials?
see, our rishis, they were visionaries, they were drishtadharas. They could see beyond because of their genius in their state of alternate consciousness. And they were the greatest explorers. So here you have something which is the blueprint of the universal intelligence itself. Because here you have a drawing, the sacred geometry, which is in effect the Fibonacci sequence, the golden ratio, the pi, all these things are met, and it just becomes a way in which you can harness the energy of the universal intelligence. In a way, it is like cracking the code of the matrix. So we start outside, which is at space, and then you have time, and then these are all causality. These are all the karmas that we have to go through in order to reach the bindu, which is at the center. Which is Shiva is Shava without Shakti. And Shakti has nowhere to exist without Shiva. If you look at Shiva as pure consciousness and you see Shakti as the kinetic energy, they both have to come together.
Hi, this is Akanksshaa. If you're new here, please subscribe to my channel. If you resonate with me, please like, comment, and share. Welcome to Multidimensional Soul Podcast and a Talk Show. On this show, we talk about deep spiritual and mystical experiences of people which we normally shy away talking about. We are more than our physical body. We are spiritual beings on a human journey, and we discuss how a soul exists on multiple dimensions. We discuss science, technology, and spirituality point of views and perspectives on this show. Our purpose is to open our minds to limitless possibilities and our hearts to love and shine the light within bright. Namaste. We have with us today Vinita Rashinkar, who is a Sri Vidya expert and a wellness expert and spiritual mentor and healer. A very warm welcome, Vinita, on Multidimensional Soul podcast and talk show. It's an honor to have you here.
Sri Matre Namaha. Thank you so much for inviting me on your show. I'm delighted to be here.
Can you tell us about your journey? How did you get into Sri Vidya?
I would like to start by saying that we don't choose Sri Vidya. Sri Vidya chooses us. So that was the case with me as well. I was very busy building my career and bringing up my family and all of that. And it so happened that in my 50th year, I came upon the Lalita Sahasranama. From there on, that was my guiding light. And I've written 6 books. All the books came to me as a blessing from Devi herself. And really not much effort that I had to put in. All the knowledge, it just felt like it was coming to me, and I just had to pen it and bring it out and share her word. So the journey began, the sadhana started, and it became stronger and stronger with many people supporting me in it, teaching me, being my gurus. And today here I am trying to help others to learn about Sri Vidya and to come on the path and find peace and bliss in the same way that I found it.
Wow. Okay, beautiful. So in Indian scriptures, we have Tantra, Mantra, and Yantra as very significant tools for spiritual advancement and self realization as well as self actualization. What kind of role do they play in Sri Vidya? Can you just explain about that?
Sri Vidya is an offshoot of Tantra. It is the worship of one specific deity who is called Lalita Tripura Sundari. Lalita means the one who is playful. For her, all of this creation is just play. It's like a game. And she's just watching and she's just enjoying it. Tripura means the three states of being. So it's waking, sleeping, dreaming. Or we could say it's past, present, and future. Or any of the triads that exist in Sanatana. So she is the presiding deity of everything that we know as this universe. And Sundari, of course, means that she is the most beautiful because she is the mother energy. And what is more beautiful in this world than the energy that a mother puts out? Sri Vidya is her study, it's her worship. And it consists, like you said, of yantra and mantra. There is a specific yantra which is dedicated to her, which is called the Shree Chakra Yantra or just simply Sri Yantra. And the mantras that we use in Sri Vidya, there are several mantras ranging all the way from small bija mantras to very elaborate stotras such as the Lalita Sahasranama, the Lalita Trishati, and many more, which I cannot name because there are just so many.
When you talked about triad, I do remember one of the mantras, which is a combination of Goddess Lakshmi, Goddess Saraswati, and Goddess Durga or Kali. So,
Kali,
can you
yes.
talk a little bit about that?
That is what is called the Bala Tripura Sundari mantra, where we visualize the Devi as an 8-year-old child. We think of this as the stepping stone into the path of Sri Vidya because it's a very simple 3 bija mantra. So, Aim is the energy of knowledge, which is of Saraswati, because we have to go from avidya, that is ignorance, to knowledge in order to evolve spiritually. Then we also need a fair degree of fearlessness, which comes by harnessing the energy of Kali through Kleem. And Sau is the energy of Lakshmi, which guarantees abundance. So when you have these three things, you have knowledge, you have fearlessness, and you have abundance, then there is nothing left that anyone can want because all your needs are fulfilled, all your desires are complete. So that is the starting mantra of Sri Vidya.
Does somebody need to initiate you in that mantra? Can anyone chant it? And what are the rules for chanting that mantra?
This mantra does not need initiation because it's a very basic mantra. It's like going to preschool where there are not many set rules, and it's what is called a prasiddha mantra. So there is no need of any purascharana, there is no need of doing any nyasa or dhyana or any of that. It can just be chanted in isolation. The rules are for women, because we've been brought up in this environment where we are told not to do anything spiritual during our menstrual cycle. Many women prefer not to do it, but there is no rule in the Tantra Shastra which prevents us from chanting it at that time. Then the other thing is, when is an appropriate time to chant it? That again, everything in Sri Vidya is an evening practice because it's closely associated with the moon. So if you can do it in the evening, it's wonderful. If not, you can do it at any time of the day. The results will be the same. It's just that the evening energy is a little different. Apart from that, people fear that what if I give up? What if I'm not able to chant? You should not have any such thoughts because the universal intelligence is not sitting there in judgment upon you, waiting to pounce on you if you do any wrong. The only commitment you make is to yourself in this journey. The commitment is not to your guru, the commitment is not to Devi, it is not to the universe. If for some reason you're not able to do it, your mind is rebelling on a particular day, there should be no guilt associated with not being able to chant. You should be able to resume when your mind is at ease and is ready and comfortable to chant.
Okay.
So, other than that, there are no boundaries.
Okay. Somewhere I had heard Aim Klim Saw Klim Aim. Like you repeat it like that. So is that right, or do we need to do it
It
108
is any,
times?
you can, to begin with, for someone who's just starting, it's better to do just Aim Clean Sao. For someone who is finished that mandala, they can do Aim Clean Sao, Sao Clean Aim, or Sao Aim Clean. Even that is okay, because it's an encasing which happens. Okay, so you could change the positions of the bijas and still chant it. It does not change the dynamic of the mantra, but the best way to do it is Aim Kleem Sau, Sau Kleem Aim, and then again end it with Aim Kleem Sau. So it becomes 9 bijas, which are repeated one after the other.
And how long should you do it?
Ideally for 108 times every day.
Okay. Okay.
That completes, yeah, one mala.
Okay.
And when you do it for 40 days, you complete one mandala.
So when you do it for 40 days, do you kind of put one intention or sankalpa and then do it for 40 days?
Yes. You start with a sankalpa. Ideally, you start on a Friday in the Shukla Paksha, which is in the waxing phase of the moon. Like today, for example, is Shukla Paksha, it's a Friday. So, such a day is very ideal for the beginning of any kind of sadhana.
Okay. Now, in our ancient scriptures, there's a lot of significance given to the vibration of these mantras. Even if you don't know the meaning of these mantras, it's said that the vibrations are important. So, can you talk a little bit about how the Shree Vidya mantras, especially, how are they connected with vibrations? What kind of vibrations do we get?
Because Sri Vidya is largely related to Shakti, it is the divine feminine energy that we are trying to harness, that we are looking up to. Now, the bijas in themselves may not have meanings, but they do put out a certain vibration. There's a certain frequency. So in Sri Vidya, it is this frequency that is more potent, and the focus is upon this frequency. Much more than understanding the meaning, it is about chanting it correctly and trying to resonate with that frequency. So, chanting should not be restricted only to your japa time. It should become a part of your breath, what becomes eventually ajapa japa. You're doing something, you're cooking, you're going for a walk, it should just come to you. That's when the japa actually has hold over your mind. And that's when you start to see the magic. So the vibrations are absolutely essential. Like every other mantra, whether it's a small bija or whether it's a long stotra, they come with their own energy patterns. So based on what it is that you're seeking at that particular time, you have to determine which japa is working for you, which is the reason why you need a guru. You need someone to tell you that this is what will work for you at this stage. This is what will help you overcome this obstacle at this point of time.
Okay. So, this question I get asked a lot on my show from the audience, that do you need to have a guru, and is it absolutely mandatory? And it's said that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And what if we have not found our guru, or what if we have outgrown a certain guru? So, can you talk a little bit about, in general, the guru principle and how can one go about doing this?
First of all, we have to be our own gurus. We have to develop our sense of discrimination, our sense of intuition. If you go by the philosophy of Advaita, which is non duality, that we are all a part of that same Paramatma, what the Guru can teach you, you are also aware of it. So if you don't find a physical Guru, tap into your own internal resources until such time as the Guru makes his presence felt. When the Guru makes his presence felt, he is there temporarily to help you learn whatever is necessary, and then you will move on to the next person who has to teach you the next lesson, the next step. So there should be no guilt even associated with moving on from one guru to another, because there is a possibility that we will outgrow a certain teacher. And every teacher should take pride when a student outgrows him or her, because that means they are truly evolving spiritually with your support or without, it doesn't matter, because the whole spiritual process is about dissolving our ego. So I think we all have to keep this in mind, that for the Guru, he shouldn't make it about himself. For the Shishya, he also should not make it about himself. There has to be a beautiful give and take, a reciprocity.
Yeah, so beautifully explained. You talked about divine feminine some time back, and right now, as we are ascending, as collectively, as the earth is moving into higher vibration, it is said that now Kali Yuga is going to end and we are going to move into golden age, and divine feminine is going to come more prominently in the front. So can you talk about little bit the divine feminine qualities and how can we embody those?
In every civilization, in every culture across history, it has always been that the divine feminine has been at the forefront of worship. It is only recently, in the past couple of thousand years, that this has changed, where we have gone into a pattern where feminine energy has taken a backseat. But like you said, there is a change, there is a shift which is happening, and the divine feminine is coming back to take center stage. Divine feminine scares a lot of people, particularly men, because it appears to them like women are going to control them. See, this is femininity does not mean women, it does not mean woman power. In every human or in every species, there is some aspect of masculine, there is some aspect of feminine. There are some times when the masculine power is more forceful, is more visible, and there are other times when the feminine energy is more prominent. And both these together are essential for creation. You can't have one without the other. Shiva is Shava without Shakti. And Shakti has nowhere to exist without Shiva. If you look at Shiva as pure consciousness and you see Shakti as the kinetic energy, they both have to come together as Shiva Shakti Eka Rupini. That is the one Eka Rupa of Shiva and Shakti, which gives rise to creation. It's very important because, and again, that with the rising of the divine feminine, men are feeling threatened. It is not necessary for them to feel threatened, because divine feminine is a very motherly energy, and no man can deny that even he needs the energy, the love, the unconditional affection which comes from a mother.
Right. And the gentleness and nurturing qualities, absolutely.
True.
When we talk about yantras, I have seen pictures of huge Sri Yantras on certain empty lands somewhere in the world, like in the US and other places, where they are kind of spanning across acres. And it is said that aliens have, or extraterrestrials have, created those Sri Yantras over there. So, what is the connection of Sri Yantra? Is it like a portal to higher dimensions? And can you explain in detail or in depth how Sri Yantra works to connect with the higher realms or to connect with the extraterrestrials?
The example you gave is the one which was found in Oregon in the US, which was on a barren field. They found a huge drawing of the Sri Yantra, and nobody could really explain how such a complex drawing, which is difficult even to make on a computer, has been so beautifully executed on land. And it took a lot of research. There was a lot of study which went into it, which brings me to what is the Sri Yantra. See, our rishis, they were visionaries, they were drishtadharas. They could see beyond because of their genius in their state of alternate consciousness. And they were the greatest explorers. They would look into a flower and see that there is a universal intelligence at work because all the petals are arranged in a certain manner, the sepals are arranged in a certain fashion. The same with the fruit. When you cut up a fruit, there's a certain design. The same with how the universe is organized, how the stars are organized, how the atoms are organized. So they took all of this and said, this is the universal design. It is the design that brings together creation. And they made a blueprint of it, which is what the Sri Yantra is. So it is said, how the macrocosm is, so is the microcosm. So if the Sri Yantra is a blueprint of the macrocosm of the universe, it is also a blueprint of the atom. So here you have something which is the blueprint of the universal intelligence itself. And this is what makes it the connection to the higher portal of the intelligence. Because here you have a drawing, the sacred geometry, which is in effect the Fibonacci sequence, the golden ratio, the pi, all these things are met. And it just becomes a way in which you can harness the energy of the universal intelligence. In a way, it is like cracking the code of the matrix. This is the solution to cracking that code. So this is the ultimate manifestation machine.
Wow. Yeah, Fibonacci is there in sunflowers especially, and I love Fibonacci because our
Yes.
spiritual growth also is in spirals. And like you said, microcosm and macrocosm, that is Yatha Pinde Tatha Brahmande. And yes, I can see now. And you talked very beautifully about the connecting with the divine, essentially. So you mentioned that it's a great manifestation tool. So can you explain, and if you have Sri Yantra with you, if you can show our viewers the different mandalas in it or different geometric patterns in it, and explain each of
Mhm.
them, and explain how to use it as a manifestation tool.
This is a Sri Yantra, which is done in a traditional Tanjore style of painting. It's not a great device to use for meditation, but it's a very superb way of harnessing the energy of the yantra, particularly because of the use of colors and all of that. Now, in order for us to understand this, this is a very complex diagram. You can see 43 triangles, which you will see here. These are the 43 triangles. And you will see that there are 16 petals in the outer ring and 8 petals, which you may probably not see, which are in red, right? So here, these are the 8 petals. So 8 petals, 16 petals, and there are these various avarnas, as they are called. Avarana means like an enclosure. So we start outside, which is at space. and then you have time, and then these are all causality. These are all the karmas that we have to go through in order to reach the bindu, which is at the center, which is where in a temple traditionally you will see that as the garbhagriha or the garbhagudi as it is called, right? So that is the bindu. Now, to go into the detail of the Sri Yantra is very complex. So I will avoid going into much detail except to say that it has 9 avarnas or 9 enclosures, and you have to move through each enclosure until you reach a point of the bindu. Now, for manifestation, it depends on what it is that you are seeking. If your desires are at a material level, which is that you're only seeking something which is palpable, touchable, all of that, which is also okay in the Sri Vidya tradition, because normally in all philosophies, in all religions, there is this saying that you should not aspire for material things. But Sri Vidya as a tradition says you can have bhoga and moksha both together. Bhoga means the pleasures of everyday life, the pleasures of living itself, because you get this one live it well, seize the day and enjoy it. And at the same time, parallelly also seek moksha, which is liberation, bondage. Now, how do you do this? You can have all the material things, but don't have an attachment to them. Develop a sense of vairagya. If it's there, great, enjoy it. But if it is not there, don't feel it's lack. That's the important thing. Now, in the Sri Yantra, depending on what your needs are, if your needs are mainly material, you could just seek out the Sarva Asha Paripuraka Chakra, which is the 16 petals, and meditate on those 16 petals. Each petal has a significance. Meditate on that avarna for material needs. So if your manifestation has something to do with health, then you have to look at what is called the Sarva Rogahara Chakra. If I can show it to you here, it may probably not be visible, but it is this inside 8 triangles, which is called in red, this is the Sarva Rogahara Chakra. If you are looking for protection, it is this triangle, which is the Sarva Rakshakara Chakra. Now, if you are looking for something beyond, you've traversed all of these things and you've reached the innermost triangle, which is called the Sarva Siddhi Prada Chakra. You see this triangle in here? The innermost triangle, downward pointing triangle, that is the Sarva Siddhi Prada Chakra. So if you want the siddhis, then but you have done the work to reach there, then you can manifest the siddhis there. So in this way, there are many things that you can do, but it needs sadhana. It's not something that, you meditate and then it comes to you overnight, or, this is a long-term thing. You have to understand it, you have to intuit it, you have to become a part of the yantra yourself. So when you shut your eyes, you should be able to see the yantra. That's when you have internalized it.
Yeah, right. And it's complex. So you really have to integrate yourself with it and internalize it.
That's true. Yeah, that's
So
true.
are there different mantras for different avarnas, the different layers?
That's at a very advanced level of Sri Vidya.
Mm-hmm.
That's when we do things like the Sri Chakra Puja and all of that. Yes, most certainly there are different mantras, because there are different devis who are said to inhabit the different avarnas. So, but that is not for the novice. That only comes, after a couple of years of study.
Okay. So for a beginner, if we were to give something to the beginner in our audience, if they take Sri Yantra, and can they chant Aim Klim Saw along with Sri Yantra, or is there a different mantra for that?
Yantra meditation is separate.
Mm-hmm.
You meditate upon the Sri Yantra, look at it for a minute or so, and then you can do the mantra. That is Aim Klim Sau.
Okay.
But while meditating on the yantra, it's not, I don't think it's correct to chant while meditating, because these are two separate things.
Okay.
Meditation is one thing, japa is another thing. So it's two separate exercises.
Okay, got it. When we see the yantra, and right now it was two-dimensional, and at times there are
Correct.
three-dimensional, like a pyramid kind of yantra also, like
Correct.
Shri Yantra. And at times
Yes.
I have seen crystal yantras. And
Yes.
I have read that ancient Lemurian time,
Hmm.
they were using these yantras and crystals for very, very
Hmm.
advanced technologies, not just spiritual,
Hmm.
but even science perspective.
Hmm.
So, can you
Hmm.
talk a little bit about how Sri Vidya incorporates crystals in this?
What you're talking about is called a Mahameru, the three-dimensional form of the Sri Yantra. If you were to pull out the Sri Yantra two-dimensional form, it would form the Mahameru, which is the three-dimensional form. Typically, it is made in Panchaloha, which is a very good mixture of five types of metals, including some precious metals, because metals are very good conductors of energy. Then the other thing that you spoke about, crystals. Crystals and Mahameru also go very well together. There are Mahamerus which are carved on crystal, but that's a very, very intricate and difficult science. And there is a possibility that there can be a mistake in the geometry, because crystal is breakable and chippable and all of that. So you have to be very cautious when you buy a Sphatika Mahameru. Sphatika is crystal, because a Mahameru has to be without fault, just like a Sri Yantra has to be accurate geometry. Everything depends on that. It's like if in your Fibonacci sequence, if in your sunflower, the petals are misaligned, then that's not a perfect flower. It means there's a mistake in the DNA. So, in the same way, you have to be very sure about the geometry of the Mahameru or the Bhrupastara. The 2D version is called Bhrupastara, the 3D version is called Mahameru.
Okay, what I understand is the 3D version is used for focus, probably that when you want to concentrate the energies, then that's where that is used.
So, what you see here is a Mahameru, which is made in Panchadhatu, and you will see that it is very accurate geometry if I bring it closer to the lens, because you will see that this is the square, and from here you have the three concentric circles and then the various avarnas until we reach the bindu at the top. So this is a very small one. This is only 2.5 inches, but it is enough to ensure that you're harnessing. But even though it's small, it's a heavy piece because it has to hold all the energies. This is not hollow. This is because there's a lot of debate about whether this needs to be hollow or not. It is my belief that it is better when it is not hollow. So this is an example of a Mahameru.
And you just talked about there is a flaw in the DNA if the Fibonacci is not right. So, can you talk
Correct.
about how Sri Vidya impacts our DNA structure or epigenetic patterns?
So the Shri Vidya practice actually helps to strengthen your DNA, to improve the quality of your DNA. That's why I always ask people who are, pregnant, who are about to deliver, to keep listening to the Lalita Sahasranama, because that Lalita Sahasranama is already the energy of a mother. So it is very much in alignment with what a pregnant woman is going through. So it does have an effect at an epigenetic level. And the healing that happens with Sri Vidya also happens at the level of the DNA. Although this has not been scientifically validated, we can see that. Sometimes there are life-threatening ailments which get cured simply because someone has adopted a Sri Vidya sadhana, or they have approached someone who can help them heal with the Lalita Sahasranama or any of the Devi sadhanas. So certainly it does have an impact on the DNA itself.
Wow, that's very powerful. And how does this work with the chakras? Are there any specific chakras that get activated as you keep chanting?
The whole concept of Sri Vidya is very closely associated with that of the Kundalini Shakti. So we know chakras as 7, but we are talking of 9 avarnas in the Sri Yantra. So there are 2 more chakras which are not spoken about, which are between the Agnya and the Sahasrara. So you will see one here and one here. So typically, if you see in South India, they will also wear a kumkum here or a sandal paste here over the Agnya chakra. And then we wear sindoor here. So these are the 2 chakras. In addition to the 7 chakras that we know from the Mooladhara to the Sahasrara. So one is called the Soma chakra and one is called the Manas chakra. Okay. So now you have these 9 chakras which are also correlated to the 9 avarnas of the Sri Yantra. So yes, the chakras are very closely associated with the Sri Vidya sadhana. And it is important that all the chakras are open without any blockages. There is no stagnation in order for the energy to move upward and eventually reach the Agnya chakra and beyond.
Okay, so
In order for us to evolve in the spiritual path.
So what can people do to remove these blockages and purify ourselves more and more and advance spiritually?
Wherever attention goes, energy flows. So we need to take our attention to all of these energy centers. They're also important plexuses in our body. Wherever you see the chakras, they're important plexuses. For example, here you have the pineal and pituitary. Here you have the thyroid and hypothyroid. In the thoracic cavity, you have the 2 most important organs, the heart and the lungs, and so on and so forth. But how many times in a day or even in a month or in a year do we take our attention to our various parts and just give thanks to all our body parts for doing their work so diligently, so conscientiously, without any intervention from us? So where attention goes, energy flows. So it's important to take our attention to these various chakras. And when you take your attention there, most of the chakras respond very positively and the stagnation is removed. But if there are very deep traumatic situations one has gone through, or very deep wounds, like emotional wounds at a cellular level which do not get healed, then perhaps you will need the intervention of someone who can do a little bit of chakra balancing and chakra healing.
You talked quite a bit about the impact of Sri Vidya on chakras as well as the DNA. How is Sri Vidya related to quantum physics?
It is said that Sri Vidya begins where quantum physics ends. Where currently the study of quantum physics ends is where Sri Vidya actually begins, because we are going one step beyond all of these things, and we are saying that the substratum, the fundament in this universe is consciousness. So then we are talking of the Jivatma and the Paramatma. So the Jivatma is just a mere reflection of the Paramatma. And all of these things, and also in Sri Vidya, we talk of the observer effect, we talk of illusion, Tirodhana, which is, the veil which is brought about by the universal intelligence. So all of these things can be connected very closely to the most recent developments in quantum physics, including things like the double slit experiment, because in Sri Vidya, the observer is given a great deal of importance. And that's exactly what the double slit experiment also says, that everything is determined by the observer. Whether a particle remains a particle or becomes a wave depends on who is observing, whether it is being observed or not. So these are all things that we have already studied in Sri Vidya. And we knew this 10, 12,000 years ago. Even to say, as is the atom, so is the universe. As is the microcosm, so is the macrocosm. Many, many things, including the concept of Maya, of illusion, which now it's, everyone talks about the simulation hypothesis and how none of this is real, and all of this is, even Elon Musk has said that the possibility of all of this being real is 1 in a billion. And this is what we've been saying all along, that this is all Maya.
True, true. And
So
how is
that's the connection. Yeah, and quantum physics.
Yeah. So in 2022 or 23, I think, there was a Nobel Prize given for quantum entanglement. How
Yes.
is quantum entanglement explained through Sri Vidya?
That would be a very complex question to which I don't know the answer. But I think in general, the theory of quantum entanglement says that if there is a proton and there are one set of protons which may be separated over distances, they are still responding and reacting to each other. If one is feeling something, then the other one, regardless of how far it is also feeling the effects of it. So I think the closest correlation here is that of the feminine energy itself, right? Because as mothers, see, we can either be really gentle or we can be really fierce based on what instinct is serving us. So in a way, I think the analogy is that of Sri Vidya being a force of quantum entanglement.
Okay, that's a very different perspective. Yeah, thank you. When you talked about Sri Yantra for connecting to the higher vibration and the divine force, how can we connect to the extraterrestrial forces, or can it be used as a tool for astral travel as well?
I wouldn't know about that. For extraterrestrial connection, perhaps because it's sacred geometry, and if there is one common language in the universe, it is the language of mathematics. So perhaps this can be something which can supersede communication via language, via semantics. Because if there is an advanced civilization out there, then they will also know that if the same laws of the universe apply, then they are also under the same laws. They are being governed by the same laws. So they will immediately recognize the Sri Yantra as a tool of or a blueprint of the universal intelligence. But for astral travel, I have no idea about that.
Okay. You very beautifully explained about Shiva and Shakti some time back, and masculine and feminine. And right now, twin flames is rising as a spiritual path in the collective. And twin flames are here to balance the masculine and the feminine and kind of raise the collective consciousness. So, can you talk a little bit about balancing the masculine and feminine? And do you think that there is any connection of twin flames in Indian scriptures? Are there any mentions about that?
I think the phenomenon of Shiva and Shakti is nothing but that of twin flames. We are talking of two very diverse, disparate energies coming together to become one and to raise the level of consciousness, to elevate consciousness itself. And that is exactly the concept behind twin flames. So you have Shiva, pure energy, pure masculinity, standing for everything that is pure consciousness in nature, which is Purusha. And then you have Shakti, which is the feminine aspect, it's Prakriti. So Purusha and Prakriti are twin flames. When they come together is when creation happens, when anything creative happens. And I think this is probably our way of understanding the concept of twin flames.
Okay, and what do you suggest? How can a common person balance these two aspects within themselves?
For a man, it is a very scary thought to allow his feminine impulses to take over. Because the moment we say that, men get very frazzled. They say, why should I even, even things like cooking or taking care of the house is seen as bringing in or awakening your feminine side, when actually in reality it's not. These are all man-made constructs that we have put into place, that it's only a woman's role to cook or it's a woman's role to keep house and all of that. So I think for men to embrace more of the feminine things, even things like taking care of their appearance, paying attention to themselves, being more nurturing fathers, all of that will bring about a balance and help them to be better men. Actually, what happens is that you do not become less of a man by embracing your feminine side. You become more of a man. You become a better man. And the same for women. I think in our quest for being, asking for equality and fighting, for femininity, this whole role of feminism, it has actually detracted from us, from the value that we bring to society. Because there is absolutely nothing wrong in being who we are and accepting who we are unabashedly without trying to become like a male version of yourself. It doesn't help. So again, we have to embrace ourselves, embrace that we are more emotional, we are more sentimental, we are softer, we are gentler. We are not necessarily weaker, but we are softer and gentler because we are mothers. And also, if you're not a mother, there is nothing to feel offended about. Mother doesn't mean only a physical mother to a physical child. It means mothering a dog, it could be mothering a plant, it could be mothering anything. It's just an instinct that we have to fulfill. So it's important for both men and women to understand this and to embrace the other aspect which they try to somehow suppress. Because women, we suppress our masculine urges, we try not to lose our temper, we try not to get angry. There are times when it's important to also feel all of these emotions in order to be a better woman, to be a more complete woman. So it applies to both genders, that embrace that which you're not, and you will become a better human being for it. But in the spiritual path, one thing I have discovered is that gender is meaningless. For me today, I do not look at any embodiment as male or female. I just see them as a spiritual entity having a physical experience.
Wow, so beautifully explained. Yeah. Can you share with us a couple of most profound spiritual experiences that you have had with Sri Vidya?
I think I wake up every morning and I know that there will be something miraculous or magical that will happen. So I think it would be a disservice to many of the other experiences, but I will try since you're asking. So, for example, recently someone asked me to bring them some yantras from India. And it's a very auspicious thing to bring yantra for someone because Devi only comes when it is her desire to enter someone's life. So, on the day before I was to go and deliver the yantra, the entire box, and these are heavy yantras, it fell on my right toe, and it really was immensely painful. But I understood immediately that this is happening for a reason. Let me just be quiet and let me reflect upon it, and let me give grace that there is no greater damage which has happened. The next morning, I went to deliver this yantra, and the lady of the house was limping. And she says she met with an accident on the very same right toe. She developed a hairline fracture because something hit it so hard at the very same time, possibly when this happened to me. So these kind of things, see, to someone who doesn't believe, it can just sound like nonsense. But for some of us who come with the belief that the yantra was trying to take away a little bit of her pain, probably not cause her greater damage, and gave me a little bit of it because I could still bear it, is my understanding of it. So these kind of things every day I observe. It's magical, it's miraculous. Every single day, something or the other takes me by surprise. And all I can say is that I have acquired her grace for this moment. And for that, I give my entire gratitude, and I keep my sadhana going for that reason.
Wow, so beautiful. Yeah. Can you share any of the experiences of your either of your chanting or meditation where you could connect at a very deep level with Tripura Sundari Ma?
I wouldn't say with Lalita Tripura Sundari so much, but I did have one experience which still lingers with me. Maybe a couple of years ago, when I finished my meditation, I was still fairly new, and I was doing maybe Varahi mantra or something of that kind. And I remember very distinctly seeing this beautiful vision which felt very real, of a very large goddess who I did not know the name of. I could just I could see her. It was not a visualization. It was that she was sakshat, she was there. And she was fierce, but I was unafraid. I was just basking in the glory. I could feel my temperature rise. I could feel, that my face was red because of the heat that was emanating. And I didn't know her name, but I just prostrated before her and I said, "Thank you for giving me this darshan." A couple of days later, I realized that everything that I had seen, the Sheshnag, the fierceness of her fangs, it was Pratyangira Devi, who is also one avatar of Lalita Tripura Sundari. And at that time, I think this vision came to me because I needed protection. And I cherished that moment because perhaps I was in that state for a couple of minutes or a couple of hours. I don't know. Because there's no way you can assess these things. It just feels like it's a chimera. It just starts and it ends. But in real time, it could have been any number of hours or minutes. I don't know. But I cherish and value this vision that Devi gave me of herself. And to this day, when I close my eyes, I'm able to just completely see every single detail of what she displayed to me.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that with us. So beautiful. You talked about your clients' experiences. I also understand that you guide young entrepreneurs in the wellness space. So, can you just talk about that?
It so happens that the younger generation of today are very interested in spirituality, and they are keen to understand how they can use ancient wisdom and marry it with modern science and modern knowledge and information. So my journey with entrepreneurship, with mentoring entrepreneurs, started when there was this one boy who had studied in US and Barcelona, and he had done a course in product design and very highly qualified, but he chose to come back to India. He could have got a job anywhere else in the world. He chose to come back to India and he wanted to dabble in spiritual products because he saw the value, and he thought that this needs to be taken to the world. So that was the first thing that I started to do. And that went on to become Shunya Wellness, which is now a very well known company, and he's doing very well for himself. And there, see, the thing is, it's important not just to have the spiritual knowledge, but also to bring it into practice and to make it reach the common man. So, any such projects, if anyone's interested in getting that kind of guidance, I'm happy to help them. And in the little that I know, with the little knowledge that I have, I'm happy to share with the world.
You talked about ancient wisdom being relevant in the modern time. So, can you give some tips to our audience as to how they can integrate this ancient wisdom easily in their daily routines?
I have been a student of Ayurveda for more than 25 years. So, also Vastu, gemology, Jyotishya, all these things. This for me is ancient wisdom. So, I would urge everyone to understand what your great grandmothers, your grandmothers have taught you over these years. Simple things like eating with your fingers, using banana leaf as a plate, when possible, not on an everyday basis, but just because that experience will show you what you're really missing out in life. Walk barefoot every day, consume ghee because it's a medicine in Ayurveda. Try and eat sattvic food. Do not eat food which has been refrigerated, which is preheated, pre-cooked, all these kind of things. And try to use chemicals to the minimum. And I think especially as women, as we are aging, the pressure to look a certain way, to be a certain weight, don't allow society to determine who you are and what you should be. Just go by your own instinct about what is right for you. You don't have to look a certain way. You're beautiful the way you are. You have to accept yourself at whatever shape, whatever size you are. And I am the first one to say that aging has been tremendously difficult. I'm on the cusp of 55 today, and I know how hard it has been for me to accept that I have to age gracefully. It's an everyday battle, but I still stay away from the urge to. I'm not judging anyone who wants to do a Botox or do, the latest facial, but you don't need to do it. You can just age gracefully and accept who you are at every stage in your life.
So, we've covered quite a bit. I have a few questions which I ask all my guests. So, can I ask you those?
First,
If you were to explain multidimensional soul to a common person, how would you explain it?
I would say, so there is Vinita here, and then there is multiple variations of Vinita across the universe in different dimensions. What you are seeking in this embodiment is perhaps being fulfilled in another. And what you are seeking in that embodiment is possibly what you're doing here on this planet. So know that every thought that comes to you is coming from a certain source, and that every desire that comes, which arises, which is called vasana or vritti, is being fulfilled in some dimension. If not this, in some other dimension, it is being fulfilled. This is my understanding. I might be completely wrong, but this is how I like to believe that the universe operates.
Yeah.
Because there are times when we get a glimpse, we have this deja vu, we have this feeling of synchronicity or serendipity, and even manifestation for that matter can be understood from a multidimensional aspect. So what you're seeking in this dimension is perhaps being reflected off from another dimension.
Absolutely, yeah. What is holistic well-being according to you?
It is not just physical, mental, spiritual. I think it is going beyond that and understanding that the entire planet, the entire universe needs to be in a space of wellness for us to thrive and for us to survive. Because at the end of it all, if we believe that consciousness is fundamental and that we are all parts of Paramatma, it's not just that we have to take care of our well being, but we have to take care of the well being of everything around us on this planet. For me, that is holistic well being.
Okay. What is the ultimate purpose of life?
To learn the lessons that we have come to learn through whatever soul contract we had made, and to discover the purpose while actually doing the learning. The purpose will reveal itself only when we start to do the work. And the purpose is different for each one of us. And when that purpose reveals itself, you will know why you have come here and what you need to do in order to fulfill your embodiment.
What is love?
Love is the highest frequency, the highest energy that exists. And we have come on this planet to experience love. Love, not just in the romantic sense of the word, because that's the most common way that it is understood, but love in every respect. Love from friends, from strangers, from animals, from plants, to and fro, back and forth. Not just love from which is received, but also love that we have to give. And that is the highest calling. And that is also the highest frequency. To be the balm to someone's wounds is the only way we can heal. And the wounds are immense, the wounds are for everyone because we have come here to heal. So, love is that balm which heals all wounds.
What is self love?
A very important aspect of this journey we call life, because it is only when we value ourselves that we can say that there is self love. When we start to value ourselves, then we can also value, then this self love can then emanate and be felt by others. You can share this love with others.
What is your parting message for our audience today?
The elevator pitch of Sri Vidya, as I like to call it: let me not seek shelter with anyone. Let me offer shelter to anyone who needs it. Because in this message, what one is trying to say is that you are completely self sufficient. You are perfect the way you are. You don't need validation. You don't need to make any changes. Just be who you are in acceptance and be grateful for whatever stage you are at in life.
And how can people connect with you?
A best way would be to send me an email at vinita@vinitarashinkar.in. I'm pretty prompt on responding to my mails. And especially if they are keen about studying Sri Vidya, that's the best way to connect with me. For those who feel that they need to have a face to face talk with me online, there is a meetings portal. They can just check out my website and they can seek an appointment, and I will be available to talk to them one on one and guide them, possibly heal them if they are in need of healing. Depends on the nature of their trauma. And of course, on Instagram, you can find me at Vinita_Rashinkar.
We'll give all the details in our video description. It has been absolutely a privilege and a pleasure to have you here on this show. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Akanksshaa ji. It's been my pleasure. If I may close with a blessing for everyone who has tuned in today, it is from our oldest Veda, which is the Rig Veda, and it is from the Shree Suktam.
Sure, yes.
ॐ श्रीवर्चस्वमायुष्यमारोग्यमा विधाचोपमानं महीयते धान्यं धनं पशुं बहुपुत्रलाभं शतसंवत्सरं दीर्घमायुः श्रीमात्रे नमः.
Thank you and namaste.
Namaste, Akanksha ji.
Thank you for watching and listening in wherever you are in the world. As Ramdas says, that we all are just walking each other home. So thank you for co-creating the new earth along with me and our guests. And if you resonate with me, do subscribe to my channel and do let us know how you find our episodes. Thank you so much. Lots of love.